You're listening to another episode of From the Dust with Sarah Decker, a place to explore spiritual experiences and topics. And no, we are never alone. Thanks for being here today. I appreciate you coming on and making time.
That's okay.
I've really enjoyed what I've read from the Chronicles of the Children of Araneck, which is hopefully what we'll talk about a lot today. Here's the book. It just came in the mail. So why don't you introduce yourself?
Okay. My name is Matthew Gill.
Wait. I don't hear you at all now.
No, you can't hear me. Oh,
I see. I think it was a me problem. That is my fault.
Can you hear me now?
I can, yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, I'll introduce myself. My name is Matthew Gill. I am the prophet and first elder of the Restored Branch of Jesus Christ, based in Derbyshire, in England, in the United Kingdom. Don't know what else to say, really. Been married for 23 years. I got 3 kids. That's pretty much it, really. I mean, there's not much else to say.
No, that's great. So I know I have my curiosities, as reading the Chronicles of Araneck is so cool. One of the really fun things I thought was just at the beginning, it talks about how they created the Stonehenge type formations,
right.
Like the rock things around Britain and stuff. And I thought, that is just such a fun thing to be like, well, maybe that's where it came from, instead of, because that's one of those things that you hear about that they're like, we don't know how this was created, kind of like the pyramids, it's just we don't know how they did this, but it's here.
It's one of those areas in I suppose archaeology in general where nobody has a clue how these things were built, but everybody thinks they know how they were built. And so we have a lot of suppositions about how these things were made. And what the Chronicles does, or has done since the day it was first given, is give us a historical narrative as to who built certain stone monuments, where they built them, and why they built them, which is more important. Because if you look at mainstream archaeology, they have no idea why Stonehenge was built. They have no idea who the people were that built them. And the beauty of the Chronicles is that we now have answers to those questions. So, and other things as well. I mean, it gives us answers to questions such as who built the hill forts that are dotted all over Great Britain, the long barrows, and who those people might have been, because we historically and archaeologically we don't know, but I claim that I know exactly who built them. So that's great.
Great. So that brings me to the question of, how did you come in how did this come forward? Did you actually have a book you translated where you was
right? Okay. Yeah. I mean, it's a pretty normal, weird story, I suppose. I've been in the LDS Church for a very long time, and left the LDS Church in, I want to say 2005-ish. And I'd had a lot of experiences leading up to this that I've spoken about, on other podcasts and stuff. But the coming forth of the Chronicles of the Children of Araneck, I was led firstly on the 16th of August 2006 in a dream to go to Stonehenge. And so I went to Stonehenge with my dad and a friend, and we had this really, really spectacular experience while we were there. And I was told at the time, uh, the records are going to come forth in the coming weeks ahead. And so I went back home in anticipation of this. And then on the 23rd of September 2006, we had the plates. Well, that's not true. We had the box that contained the plates delivered to our house. My wife and my father saw them first, and then I saw them after that point. And then, as I say,
the
when
ones that found them, is that what you mean?
Yeah. So when they came to the house, I was stopping at my parents for the weekend. I think we'd stopped over on a Friday night because we didn't want to travel home, so we just stopped at my parents' house. And my wife got up pretty early with my son at the time, who was just a baby, and I heard this commotion downstairs, and that wake up, come down, something right. Oh, anyway, so I go downstairs, and my dad is holding this box, and as soon as I saw the box, I knew what was going on. So my mum said to us, "I think you should take the box and go into the dining room and talk about what's going to happen, what you're going to do." So we go into the dining room, my dad and I, and we start to examine what's in the box. The box is it's probably just a little bit smaller than a shoebox size. It's very old, made of wood. Nothing really more to say about the box, really, other than the fact that when we opened the box, we found 3 packages. There was a small package, a rectangular package wrapped in leather, and then there was a small set of 24 brass plates, and then underneath those there was another larger set of 10 copper plates. So we just examined them at the time, and we thought, what do we do now? Do we get them out? What do we do? So I basically said, we need to stop here, put everything back in the box, let everybody know, pray about what the next step is. And it stayed that way until about the 1st of October 2006. And then we just unpackaged everything and looked through everything, and it was one of those spectacular moments where you knew something was going to come, but until it comes, the excitement, it's you don't know what to expect until it's there. And when they were there, then we had to decide how to proceed. What do we do? Which set do we translate, if we're going to translate any? How is the translation going to take place? What are the different? Why are there 2 sets of plates? Firstly, so that's pretty much how we received them, and then once we'd received them, larger questions came into play, because none of us were attending any church services or anything of that nature, because we pretty much all of us had left the LDS Church, and we didn't go and join any other branch or organisation. So the first question I was asked by my dad is, well, now we've got these, what do we do about what's the mechanism we're going to use to get these out? And so I went away and prayed about it, and to cut a very, very long story short, the Lord said to me, you can start a branch or a church. However, there are caveats to it. And so the first one of those caveats was to translate the plates and then go from there. So that's what we did.
So going back a little bit in your story, when you said that you went to Stonehenge and you were told that the books would be coming forth, did you know at that time that you would be asked to translate them? Or was this just like a quest of records of people from long before? Like what was
Right.
that really a did you know at that time?
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, I wasn't. I was told beforehand that a record was going to come forth at some future time. But I wasn't sure as to whether I was going to be the translator of those records. So at first, it was just it was this. I suppose it was this quest for these ancient records just to be brought forth into the modern era. Um, it was while I was at Stonehenge that I suddenly realised, well, hang on a minute. I'm having all these experiences. I'm at Stonehenge because I've been told to be here. It's probably more than likely going to be me that's going to do the translating. So by the time I left Stonehenge, I was pretty convinced that I was going to be the one to do the translating work, and that um, my dad and my friend were going to be involved in the writing, the I suppose you would call it transcribing. But until we got the actual plates in our possession, we hadn't made any firm plans or any idea of how it was going to proceed. So as soon as we got the record, that's when we got together and we said, okay, this is how I think we should go ahead. This is how I think that we should proceed. And that's pretty much what we did. I mean, we formed the branch alongside receiving the records. So it was a growing experience for the branch as much as it was for us individually. Um, and the only time we would translate would be on a Sunday after branch meetings. So we wouldn't translate in the week at all. We wouldn't translate. The only time we translated was on a Sunday after we had finished branch meetings and Sunday school, and we'd close up the meetings. And then myself, my dad, and my friend would go into my parents' dining room, and we would spend maybe an hour and a half, roughly, translating or going through it.
So I'm curious how old you were at this time and also what you used to translate, if anything.
Okay, right. So, oh gosh, I'm going back now, 2006. So I was in my middle 20s, still quite young. I mean, I was married. I got a new child. He was only like one and a half, two maybe. So he was quite young, and yeah, it was quite weird because most of my Sundays were taken up with translating, and I didn't really get much time with the family because we were doing this work. But the way it was translated, I mentioned earlier there were 3 packages in the box. So there was a small rectangular package, and in that rectangular package, which was bound in this old leather, this really, really old, were these. I hate using words like spectacles and glasses because, the Joseph Smith connotation, the Urim and Thummim and all that. But they were. I don't know if you've ever seen. They were like an old medieval pair of glasses, big, huge lenses, really thick, with an arch in the middle. There were no arms or anything like that. So you'd have to.
So you'd have to hold them.
One of the funny things was they were so big because they were quite big. They wouldn't stay on my face very well, so we had to kind of manufacture a way of them staying on my face for like an hour. But yeah, so the way it was translated was through the translators or interpreters, which is what I call them. And what else? That one I had a blue lens and a red lens, and they were in triangle shapes. So that was interesting, which I learned out later what they were for. But so yeah, it was just one big amazing trip after another, because first time you laid eyes on these things was when you were taking them out of the box, and it was just one overloadery after another. It's like, wow, these are amazing. What do they do? We don't know. This is an amazing. What does all this say? We don't know because we can't read it. So I would put the interpreters on, and then I would have when we translated the book of Araneck, which is the first book in the Chronicles. It was on 24 brass plates, and they were only tiny. They were, I don't know, because I know you're doing audio, but about half the size of a novel, a book. They were quite small, but when you turn them over, they weren't thick. They made a rattling noise when you turned them over one after another. They turned quite easily. They were kept in very good condition, as far as I could tell. And so I would put the interpreters on, and I would look at the page that I had in front of me, the plate, and then above the line of text that was there would appear a sentence or a word or a description of an object. And then when that wasn't good enough, I would see an interpretation of what it was trying to say. And I suppose it would follow very similar to how Joseph Smith translated the gold plates, or whatever they were, the plates that Joseph Smith had. Because I don't believe in the stone in the hat thing. I think that's a red herring. But as someone who has actually translated a document of ancient origin, I think the way that he did that is exactly the way that I was presented to do this, was to put on these tools, and they would allow you to see what this text says. Now, I must be very clear that when you read the Book of Araneck or the Chronicles of the Children of Araneck, you're reading my interpretation of what's on the page. For example, I'm sure if someone else translated it, they might describe things differently to the way I did, or they might see more complicated words or analogies. Whatever came out because of me and what I was shown. But the idea that it's exactly what was on the plates is not. It's false. I mean, I don't believe the Book of Mormon was translated that way. I certainly, after reading a lot of what Joseph Smith said about translating the Book of Mormon, I believe Joseph Smith put down on, or others put down on paper, what Joseph Smith said. I don't necessarily think that's exactly what was on the plates itself. I think Joseph Smith used words, vernacular, and interpretations that were unique to him, and put those down. And it's exactly the same way that the Book of Araneck was translated. It's that simple, really. There was no complicated method in it. It was just put on the interpreters, look at the page, and read what you saw. And if you couldn't read what you saw, or it was hard for the record to tell you what to see or what to write, you would see a vision of an event. For example,
that makes sense, because I read quite a bit of it and was just reading that and thinking, wow, this is really, really visual. So
yeah, I mean, the whole translation method was very, like, I would be shown people and places and events, and then I would have to describe those things to the guy sitting there. And of course, when you're describing something like that to somebody else, they're each going to write that differently. So when we came to finally putting this onto like a word processor on a computer, there were obviously, you'd have to make sure and check what's he written, and what did the record actually tell me, and then and go, oh, that's not, you didn't quite get that right. He got it more accurate than you. The translation of the plates was pretty straightforward. I mean, I won't lie. It was, you put on the interpreters and you pretty much do what's in front of your eyes, and you say what's in front of your eyes. The hard part wasn't anything to do with the translation of the actual hard material. The hard part was taking that material and putting it into English and putting it onto a word processor and making sure it all correlated properly, so you had a cohesive document. And that's really what we've been doing with the book over the years, is going back to the original material, the original English written material that the guys had, which I still have, and making sure whenever we make updates to the book or to the PDF that everything's still right and everything still is accurate, and that did we miss anything out? I mean, going through this, did I miss anything out when I put this first up? I don't know. I have to go back and read it again. And you look through the text and you go, oh, hang on a second. I'm missing a story here. Where's that story gone? And you go back to the original written text and you go, oh, yeah, exactly. It's on page 6 of document 3. You go, why wasn't that put in? And that's the hardest part. The hardest part is making it accessible for people to read. So we finally got to a position, I think, with the Chronicles, and we are going to be doing a brand new edition soon, hopefully. Just making sure that everything is there that was in the last edition, and that everything is still there that was in the last edition. Because, as I often said, if there are mistakes, they're not the record's mistakes. They're mistakes that I've made, or they're the mistakes that we've made whilst putting this out. I'm aware that there are punctuation errors and things like that, but that's, I mean, have you ever read the Joseph Smith manuscript of the Book of Mormon? I mean, it's pretty ropey stuff. I mean, there's spelling errors and crossings out all over the place. And no one ever says to me, well, the Book of Mormon, well, some people do. The Book of Mormon's not true, is it? Because how could it possibly be true when there's all these mistakes? I mean, I don't know. But the most
perfection, but their version of that.
Right, yeah, the most interesting bit to me in translating was when we got to the second set of plates, which were landscaped. They weren't portrait, because the plates of Araneck were a portrait, and the religious records were a landscape type plate, so it was wider, and plus it was a different material. It was brass and it stank. It was horrible, and it was written in a different language too. I knew that straight from the off, because when I looked at the Chronicles, when I looked at the Araneck plates and I looked at these other plates, the first thing I said to my dad was, they're 2 different languages. They've got to be, because they don't look anything like one another. And that intrigued me. Well, why are they in different languages? Who wrote these second set of plates? There's only 10 of them. And we finally found out as we were doing the work that the smaller landscape templates were the religious record that is in the back of the Book of Araneck. So if you go to the back of the Book of Araneck, I was recently reading it. If you go back to the Book of Araneck, before you start the Book of Araneck, there is something called the religious practices of the people of Araneck, or something like that. Here they are. Yeah, those were the records of the religious practices of the followers of God. It's quite convoluted, but that whole page from 226 to what is it, 232. This is exactly what was on the landscape copper plating, and we know now why they were different, because they were written by the people of Ridnon and not the people of Araneck, which is all, you got to read the record to figure it all out. I mean, I spent so long telling people stuff.
No, that's great actually, because those were the people where they were sent up north because there was a people there, and they have the whole like library, right? The large library in the side, correct?
Yeah. So that
was the record from them.
Yeah, that whole story is probably one of my most favorite story in the book. Actually, the three righteous brothers go north to where I live right now is in Derbyshire, which is the middle of the UK, and that's where they came and went through. In fact, I can take you from my house to the actual place where they went, which I've taken people to see before. Very cool. Which is really cool. But yeah, so they had the library. They were a priestly people. They kept, they kept loads of records. I mean, tons of records, which the people of Araneck didn't really do very much until they found the people in the north. So, the story's great because there's this library that is still yet to be found with all these records in it, and they were the people in the north, the people of Ridnon and Limdon. They were like seriously religious. I mean, they would put most religious people to shame. I mean, they were really religious. And the people in the south, the people of Araneck, weren't really that. I mean, they were religious, don't get me wrong, but when they got to the north and they found these people, they were like, whoa, this is nuts, this is crazy.
Which made me wonder why God had them join under the people in the south, under their prophet.
Right.
I thought that was so interesting.
Yeah.
So that's even more interesting.
Right. Yeah, because I mean, they go north, these three brothers, and they find this really religious people. There's no prophet. There's a council and there's priests, but there's no prophet. However, those people have been waiting for a people with a prophet for hundreds of years. So when they come together, it all makes sense. It all fits in perfectly. We have the prophet. You have the religious records. Let's get together. Let's become one people. And then from then on, when you talk about the people in the Book of Araneck, you're talking about just this intermingled cultural people that snowball into Araneck in the end. It's very hard if you haven't read the record, and I'm glad that you've read it, is because when you try and explain the story to people, well, where do you want me to start? I mean, if I had to tell you the whole story, we'd be here till next week. The one thing I will say about the Book of Araneck, unlike the Book of Araneck, and we have to look at them separately, because the Book of Araneck came in 2015, so it came a lot later. The Book of Araneck is very similar culturally to the Book of Ether. There are a lot of similarities with regards to culture, warfare, their ideas of religious piety is very similar. But if you then read the Book of Araneck, which is the latest one we have, the tone's completely different, because you're talking about 50 years after the death of Araneck at the very. I mean, the book of Araneck ends roughly around, say, 300 BC, give or take. It's not a perfect accurate date. Give or take 50 years either side. It's around about 300 BC, and then Araneck doesn't pick up the narrative for at least 50 years after that. So there's this big gap, and he's experiencing life in a totally different manner to his father. There's no cohesive society. There's no civilization. It's wandering from place to place. There's no cohesive religious uh, doctrinal church anymore. That's gone. So the tone's different. However, if you take the whole book, the whole Chronicles together, the overriding feeling I got when I translated it, and I still do when I read it, is it you could put this to one side, and you could take the Book of Ether and read it and go, yeah, there's a lot of similarities between the way the story's laid out, their religious, the way they look at their religious life, the way they conduct their warfare. And that would make sense because at the very beginning of the book of Araneck, we know that Araneck, the first prophet of the people, knew the brother of Jared, and that they travelled for a period of time before they split off. So there would be this cultural crossover between the two tribes. And the book of Araneck isn't a closed biosphere, which really stumps a lot of people, because when you talk about the Book of Mormon, for example, a lot of people get the impression that the Book of Mormon was written in a closed biosphere. There was no outside influence at all. We know that's not true archaeologically. There were people coming and going in the Americas all the way through the Book of Mormon who weren't Nephites or Lamanites. However, because it was across the Atlantic Ocean, you had sporadic influence. But we're talking about an island that's very close to Europe here in the UK. We're talking about an island that we know is frequented by lots of different people at lots of different times. And when you read the record, you see that play out. You see that there are people from the outside culture coming in to either help or live with or marry within that culture. So we know, for instance, there's a Jaredite there, or a set of Jaredites there. We know that there are these painted warriors from the east, whoever they are, they come in at one point. And then, of course, you have the migration of the Araneck family from Central Europe, which is, of course, going to make a huge difference to the people that live in the UK anyway. So there's always coming and going, there's trade. And when people read the Book of Jonah, they say, well, were these people? Yeah, of course. There was trade between Europe and the mainland. There were people coming and going. It wasn't a closed off society. You are going to get cultural influences from lots of different people. But the thing that makes it perfectly unique is that throughout all these comings and goings and all this cultural contamination all over the place, is that their religious life pretty much stays consistent right to the very end. They are awaiting the birth of Jesus Christ. They're not necessarily waiting for him to appear to them on the island. They're not particularly very interested, I don't think, in actually seeing him on the island. But what they are very interested in, because they know he exists, because they saw a vision of him, a pre-mortal Christ, they are waiting for the transcendent moment of the birth of Jesus Christ, because they know that when that happens, the game changes. All their prophets know this, that when the birth of Christ happens, the game changes completely, and a whole new set of promises and covenants come into play. And that is very, very well relayed by Araneck when he goes before the Council of Elders and tells them of the vision he has had of the birth of Christ and the death of Christ and the resurrection of Christ and how that's going to affect their society. And we better acknowledge the fact that he is at least going to be born, and he is at least going to be influential on the way we live our lives. Now, it isn't until the Book of Araneck that we get Jesus in any tangible form coming to the UK, and he only comes as a young boy. So he hasn't. By the time he comes to the UK, when he's 12 or 13, this isn't Jesus Christ of the New Testament. This isn't a guy who has everything everything perfectly mapped out, ready for the New Testament teachings. This is a young lad who knows he's the Son of God, who is, I like to say, testing and trying out ways of delivering the message of his Father to people and how that works, which is extremely interesting, because I think far too often with Jesus Christ, we look at the New Testament Christ, and let's be honest, he comes into the narrative fully polished. I mean, there's virtually no learning involved in it at all. He comes out and he's fully polished, and he gives this huge Sermon on the Mount speech, and he's doing all these wonderful things. We don't get any background to Jesus. The book of Araneck gives us, or the Chronicles give us, some idea of how this young Jewish Son of God forms his religious identity and wants to somehow share that with other people, but doesn't quite know how to share it with other people in a way that's going to make sense to them. So from that aspect, I think the Chronicles is extremely enlightening. I know he gives a version of this. Well, he gives a version of the Sermon on the Mount in the back of that. So, I mean, I've had people say to me before, "Where's Christ in the document?" And I'm like, "Well, have you ever read it?" He's there. If you're willing to open your eyes and read it, they testify of Christ all the time in this, all the time. And that was something I noticed when I was translating, that although it is very top heavy with war and politics, running through the whole story is this Christ anticipation, this, who is this guy? He's going to change the game when he comes, you know. And that's very special, I think, with the Chronicles. The Book of Mormon.
Well, to be fair, the Book of Mormon is very,
right,
for sure.
Yeah. I've lost you. There you go.
Sorry, you just cut out for a second.
Yeah, sorry about that.
Yeah. That's what I was gonna say, was the Book of Mormon is very war focused as well. So.
I lost you.
It's okay. I think it's
it's pain. It's a pain. Sorry about this. I don't know what's going on.
Me. Hopefully it'll smooth out here. I may have to.
Come off.
It's okay. I'm gonna streaming harder. I've got 7 kids and they're all home. It's a snow day.
Lovely.
And it's making it a little jumpy. Yeah, so I'm just gonna send a message to my mom. She lives with me. She's watching the kids down there, so I'm just gonna make sure they get off the internet here. Sorry about this. I'll just hopefully that'll smooth it out.
I've got kids. I know what that's like. Be our heads at the internet. Oh, blimey, yeah, it's a nightmare.
Yeah.
I think we might have smoothed out, actually. It seems to have come back a little bit. Yeah.
She hasn't responded to my message here, so I don't know if I should just call her real quick or something. Sorry about this.
No.
But I figured, let me call and make sure to smooth it out so we can be good for the rest of this.
Go for it. It's fine. Don't worry.
Hey, Mom. Could you make sure no one's on the internet? It's getting really, really jumpy up here.
Oh yeah. Hey, your mom needs you to get off the internet.
Thank you, Mom.
It's affecting her streaming. You need to get off now.
Thanks, Mom. Bye.
I love it.
Okay.
Brilliant.
Yeah, and it's worse because they have phones, and then they get on their phone, and then they have a bunch of devices on. So
Yeah, it's
it
crazy.
makes it harder.
I've got 3 boys, and internet. Yeah, it's mental. So.
Yes, I have five boys and 2 girls.
Oh,
And
okay.
yeah.
Well done. Yeah.
Thanks. Well, so what I was trying to say was that the Book of Mormon is very war heavy. And so that's I mean, as far as that goes, that just seems to be the way these documents are sometimes. And I think that's for a purpose, not because war is being glorified. It's the opposite. War, they're trying to warn us. It's like, please learn from this, because these people are killing themselves, and they're choosing hate and war. And which leads me to one of my questions I had for you is that, why do you think this book came forward at this time? What do you think it's offering the world at this time? And how do you think it helps us in our day?
Yeah, I've been asked that question before. I think, look, let's be honest. The restoration, family and community isn't in the greatest of places. You have a wholly dominant LDS church running the narrative, and then you have these scattered independent branches all over the place, which of course we've added to. But and I think the reason the Book of Araneck was given at that time to today is because I think it was trying to recenter people's focus on Christ, on what is important to our restoration lives. Look, I'll be honest, growing up in the LDS church wasn't very Christ-centered for me. It was very prophet heavy and very handbook heavy, but it wasn't very Christ heavy. There's a big period in the 90s where, to talk about Jesus Christ was like, let's concentrate on the Book of Mormon or the prophets. And I think the idea of the Book of Araneck is, I think we've gotten off track. I think if we recentered our lives on the central message of the Book of Araneck, which is the coming of Christ, how that's going to play out, maybe, just maybe, we wouldn't be so rigid in our organizational thinking. And I also believe that period of our modern history, look at all the stuff that was going on at that period. I mean, we get into the Iraq War in 2003, and that plays out terribly. And then you get into Afghanistan, and that plays out terribly. And we are where we are today, and it's an absolute mess. And these guys are saying, this war is not the answer here. We've tried that method. It doesn't work. It never worked. And when it goes awry, it goes awry really badly. Take your focus off the war. Take your focus off the organizational biases. Take your focus off my branch is better than your branch, or my church is better than your church. My prophet's the only true prophet, and all that nonsense. And focus on who we're trying to teach about centrally, and it's Jesus Christ. And regardless of what people may think about the Chronicles, the central message is Jesus, or the Lord of Heaven, as they call him sometimes, is real. He plays a central role in our lives, and boy, he's coming. He's going to come. And when he's born, that's going to change how we live our lives. And for us, when we read that, I'm not waiting for his birth. I'm waiting for his second coming, and that's going to be total game change. But are we ready to receive that? Are we ready to receive the second coming of Jesus Christ? And unfortunately, we might be ready on an individual level, we might be ready as families. But I happen to believe that the restoration gospel laid out in the early church, the Joseph Smith and the Book of Mormon and the Doctrine and Covenants, was what God intended for his people. We have more than moved away from the original tenets of the restoration, and we are, as a family, bickering with one another too often, finding fault with one another too often, and isolating people too often. When you leave an organisation as big as the LDS Church, I mean, that's, unless you take your family with you, like your mom and your dad, or your most of the rest of the world don't want anything to do with you. That's it. It's over. You're done. And that's not good. That's not good. What I've learned is that as a community, we need to come together, and that's what the central message of the Book of Araneck is. Come together now, save ourselves, or die.
Yeah. There was this part in here, I don't know if I could find it, but I just loved it, and that was basically summed it up. Come together or die. I mean, come on, wake up, everybody. And I thought it was such a great message for our day. And so there's been so many things as I've read through this. I kind of laughed at myself because I had started reading the Chronicles of Araneck last year, and I had received, like, I don't know, 10 or 12 different books that claimed to be translated or scripture, and so God had me kind of just reading through them enough until I kind of had a feel for them and could feel like I knew whether or not they were works of light, I don't know, works of God, and whether they were just like, because unfortunately, there's people out there that have just tried to recreate works of scripture in like a prideful way, And so he had me just reading through, and I don't remember how many pages I really got into the Chronicles of Araneck before the Spirit just really witnessed to me that it was translated, that it was a real work of scripture. And I thought, well, cool. Great.
Yeah, right.
Like, how cool is that? And I have to say that I can't imagine that this for you was an easy thing. I mean, it sounds like you had your friend and your dad and your immediate family seems like they were supportive, right? Yeah. But how was that coming out to the world with this book saying, yes, I was given this book, and how was that for you?
Well, to put it bluntly, bad. Yeah, I was very supported by my immediate family, by my close friends. But I suppose the saving grace for me was that I'd already left the LDS Church before all this came into being. I think had I been a member of the church still, and this had come about whilst I was a member of the church, it would have been 10 times harder than it was. Even so, it was still very, very hard. I can't tell you the amount of people we had who, disowned you. Not only have I left the church, but now I am telling people that God is using me as an instrument to bring about new scripture. I mean, you tell that to most LDS people, they're going to run a mile.
Yeah.
It's crazy. Family. Extended family don't speak to us anymore. Aunts, uncles, that kind of stuff. I'm all good with that. I mean, it's not nice Sure. And some of the rumours that went round about me and my family at that time were just ridiculously crazy. And it's not nice. However, when you're engaged in something like this, it just consumes your entire life. When you're not translating, you're thinking about not translating. when you're not praying, you're thinking about, well, why aren't I praying? So I didn't really have much time to stop, look around, smell the roses, and really see what was going on until after I'd finished it and the book was published, and I was saying to people, here it is, read it. It's going to change your life, seriously. And that's when the real vitriolic hatred started to happen. When I say vitriolic hatred, I'm not pulling any punches. I mean, it was the only word I can use is these people really hate you. They don't like you. You're bucking the trend. You're stepping out of line, even though I'd already left. You're not playing the game. You're not repentant. You're not coming back. And then of course, as you put this book out there, and this was out there in like really early, like 2007. When you put it out there, the net gets cast wider and wider and wider, and then you start to hear about people who aren't LDS, who are involved in the restoration, and they really want to talk to you. They really, really, really want to talk to you. They want to find out who you are, what you believe. They want to make good relationships with you. And I think I have more friends involved in the larger restoration now than I ever did when I was an LDS member. So from that point of view, it's been a real blessing. I'm extremely close to, I don't know if you know him, James McKay. He lives in Missouri. He's part of the independent branch movement. He's a sterling guy. I've had him here in my home a couple of times, and he's been to the UK, and I've shown him all these wonderful old ancient sites. But yeah, I mean, it was tough, but I wouldn't trade it for anything in the world.
I'm sorry to hear all that you went through. It had to have been really lonely for a while there, and really hard. And I guess if you had any words for people who may be going through something similar, and not even the same exact situation, but that type of situation where they've left an organization to follow the full restoration. I don't know how you would say it really, because I think many people have left their church for many different reasons. There's so many different reasons out there. Yeah. But as they follow their heart and find that rejection, do you have any words, I guess, that you might?
Oh yeah, I mean, my overriding thought message to them would be, and it's difficult because when people leave an organisation like the LDS Church, and I don't want to. The only reason I refer to them is because that's the only the organisation I was part of. But when people leave that kind of family, they tend to leave with very bad feelings, very confused feelings, and they tend. I've been talking about this a lot with people. They tend to throw the baby out with the bathwater. They tend to take the Book of Mormon and God and go, well, it all must be rubbish then. Yeah. My message to them would be, just because you've been burnt here doesn't mean that the central message is wrong. And instead of throwing the baby out with the bathwater, leave the organisation and re-examine your relationship with Christ first, if there is one to be had. Because I'm aware that not everybody can have a deep, meaningful relationship with Jesus Christ. at certain times in their life. I understand. But if you can leave an organization, take a step back and examine if Christ is important and central to your life, and most people think that, I think, then you can go back and read the Book of Mormon, and look at Joseph Smith with a new perspective, with a new point of view that you're not allowed to look at from the other side. And don't get discouraged. Don't. The last thing you need to be doing if you're coming out or you're transitioning, don't get discouraged. Look, there's a lot of learning to do. I mean, I've read a lot of books and talked to a lot of people, and the thing to do is to keep talking to people, whether it's family, friends, just like you would say to somebody who is going through a mental health crisis, because I think that's centrally what happens to a lot of people.
Just a second, I lost your voice. It just started breaking up.
Am I back?
You're back. I don't know what happened. It just got garbled for a second.
I think.
So keep talking to people. That's what you were saying.
Yeah, keep talking to people. I think it's very similar to when people have a mental health crisis. And there's no doubt for me that a lot of people who are coming out and transitioning go through a mental health crisis. But the thing to do in that situation is to talk to, even if they really don't want to listen to you, to talk. If you've got supporting family, that's brilliant. But just keep talking to people. Keep talking to them about your feelings, about your relationship with Jesus Christ. And especially, look, I think it's really important that people understand that I am not coming to replace or destroy Joseph Smith in any way, shape, or form. I believe Joseph Smith was a prophet of God. I believe the Book of Mormon is scripture. And I believe that the restoration under Joseph Smith was what God wanted. That's where I depart from everybody else. But I think it's important, if you're not going to throw the baby out with the bathwater, to re-examine your relationship with Jesus Christ, examine your relationship with Joseph Smith, examine your relationship with the Book of Mormon, which is central to the message. And then once you've done those things and you're on an even keel with that relationship, then you're able to look at added books of scripture or added records, and as you say, read them and discern through the Spirit of Jesus Christ. Is this really what I'm being told it is? And let the Spirit do the work. That's really, I suppose, what I would say. Just let the Spirit work. Don't fight it. The more you fight it, the further and further you're going to get away from everything. And maybe people want to get away. I don't know, but I think the majority of people that listen to your podcast, and I've listened to all of the episodes.
Oh, you have.
Thank
you. That's great.
Yeah, I mean, what I'm hearing isn't that people want to get away from God. They want some kind of meaningful relationship, and most people want that. The anti-restoration Mormons, if you like, they're gonna go that way anyway, because either they don't want a relationship with Jesus Christ, they don't want to know Joseph, and they don't want to know the Book of Mormon. Look, there are enough people out there, if you listen to them hard enough and didn't listen to anything else, could probably persuade you that there are enough problems and issues with the Book of Mormon that you could probably throw it out the window. But on the opposite end, there is enough information out there to do completely opposite. So let the Spirit guide your journey. That's what I have to say. Let the Spirit guide your journey, and don't forget that to get on your knees and pray. Keep the channel open between you and God.
I think that's great advice, and because I know I have a lot of friends who I don't know how to put it, go down rabbit holes and get really lost And I would kind of watch this from afar because, you know, I've had my own rabbit holes. I've gone down about various subjects over the years. But as I've watched kind of this path, I thought, well, it's dangerous because if you think that you've got this special information and that somehow it makes you better or somehow it makes you above the other people who don't have it, that seems like a really easy way for Satan to kind of sneak in and go like, hey, you got you're better here. And they don't have the knowledge you have, and then start feeding you things that aren't true and get really lost, you know? And so I know that's been such a fear of mine as I read. I just pray so often, like, just don't, Heavenly Father, please just help me, guide me to the things that are true and help me to discern those things that are false so that I don't get lost, because my goal is not damnation, right? You know, like my goal is a relationship with the Lord. My goal is to have happiness and eternity and to have my family and, you know, like all of these good things. Like those are my goals in life. So that's where I'm headed. You know, so please help bring those things into my life that are good and that will help me accomplish these things. And please don't help me to never get so lost that I lose that, you know, because really that's the goal. And so I think staying humble and staying aware that it can happen, but like not in fear that that you're gonna get lost, like, but because there's this delicate balance I have found of moving in faith and building that faith and understanding God is capable of far more than the box we've put him in. And then also not getting the ego or the pride that like can cause that lostness. You know, I don't know how else to put it. To cause you to get lost. And so
it's very easy, I think, for a lot of people to get lost. But I agree with everything you've said with regards to making sure that one of the ways you don't get lost is by staying humble, by staying prayerful, and looking for Christ in those things. Because look, if Christ isn't there and you can't feel Christ, that's a real big red flag for me. And look, I've seen and read lots of things that the Spirit just jumps out and says, no, this is not right. Just put it down, put it away for now, until you're ready to really, you know, deal with it. There's and isn't it true that the scriptures, the Book of Mormon, the Chronicles, all talk about that arrogance and pride journey? Don't do it. It's really dangerous. Don't get so hung up on. There are so many people who are prideful in this work, and really, really go after people. And there's no real need to do that. Especially if your goal is to bring people to Christ. The last thing you want to be doing is going after people and hurting people. So as you said, just stay humble. That'll do it.
Yeah. I was going to say that that's probably the same advice as if you are asked to do something big. Like, how do you keep it enduring, you know? Because I imagine there may be books out there that were translated by the power of God. And then the translator is like, this is too much, man. Like, I'm done.
No, I totally agree with
their head.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. I think we can underestimate just how many of these records probably do exist, and just how many people have been given an opportunity to run with it, and then just it's just too much, and it hasn't transpired. I mean, I don't always think. This is the one thing that makes me unique, I suppose, is I don't think God always chooses the very best people around to do everything that he wants them to do anyway. I think he chooses people. I'm certainly nowhere near any great shakes. I mean, I certainly think he chooses people at certain times in their lives to do things, not only to accomplish a task, but also to test the person that's doing it. Now, are there books out there that are questionable? You bet there are. There are lots that I could name on this, but you've got to be careful that just because somebody goes, well, and I often say this about myself, just because somebody has said, God has told me to do something, or I've seen an angel, or test the work. That's what we do with the Book of Mormon. That's exactly what we tell people to do with the Book of Mormon. Read it, pray about it, talk to God, and if God manifests that it's true, well, yeah, pretty much take it to the bank then. That's all I've ever asked people to do with the Chronicles. I've never said that you've got to accept this because it's the new standard of where we're going. No. I brought this book forward with the power of God. Take it, read it, pray about it. If it doesn't touch you, it doesn't manifest itself to you that way, that's okay. I'm good with that. You might not be in a place for it to manifest. You might not be wanting for it to manifest that way. If it does, then great, because the Lord has accomplished the task. It's touched your soul, it's touched your spirit. The Spirit has manifested and discerned to you that it is true, and that it is a record that we should be listening to and reading. But by no means would I force anybody to accept that on face value. It's just too big a work for people just to accept on face value, and they shouldn't anyway. If people read it and it's cohesive and it makes sense to them and it touches them, then great, brilliant. I'm really excited about that, and I'm really excited about the fact that they've found Christ in it, which is really what I want them to do. But if they don't,
I know that I experience that either. If I just choose the fear and refuse to do that, so it's just it took a lot of courage for you to put this book out there, and I bet that the people that have had a really good experience with the book helps you. Like, right. It helps. I know it would probably remind me, like, this is why God had me do it. Like, I'm so glad I listened. Read good books, seek knowledge, seek wisdom and knowledge, and read good books. And I just think, like, I can't think of there's a couple books that I really believe are translation from ancient record, and I think about what's in those books, and I'm like, I just don't see anything bad enough in here to get all worked up about, to call them not good books. You know what I mean? And so if I was just going to read this and think, okay, well, this is just an interesting fictional story that has Christ in it and tells people to believe in Christ, and hey, let's not murder each other through war, and hey, like, let's treat each other with some human decency. I wouldn't be super worked up about a book like that, No. And so I don't feel like it's harmed me in any way. Reading these books, it's like, well, okay, my faith is increased. There's things in there that I hadn't really thought about God being able to do that. And now I've thought about it, and it's brought in my faith, and great. Like, how is that a bad thing?
How is that a bad
thing? If
thing?
anything, it's a good book. So why not,
Yeah. I mean, the main people who really have a problem with everything, obviously, they're tied to their organizational structure so badly that they can't possibly open up their minds to the possibility that there could be something else, because the prophet hasn't said that there's anything else. So the best thing to do is to run a mile from it and not read it, and think badly of the people that have either given you the book or who have produced the book. I'm the opposite. I'm sorry. If someone said to me, you should read this book, it's really insightful, it's got some really good spiritual messages in it, okay, I'll give it a read, because it would be self-defeating if I did the opposite, because that's what I want people to do with the Chronicles. I want people to take it, to read it, to examine it, to pray about it, to talk to God about it, then talk to their friends and family about it, and then make a decision based upon overriding spirituality of the book and how it makes you feel, and whether you think it has enlightened your life. If it's done those things, then good.
That's great. And you just seem, I know it's probably been a lot of ups and downs over the years, dealing with all these different scenarios, you know, the way people receive it or reject it or any of that, you know. And so I just, you know what? I just want to tell you you're doing a great job and that I'm proud of you from afar. I think that is an incredible amount of courage and dedication and quiet grit, I guess you're showing doing that. And so thank you. So thank you because, you know, and you said it, you published it first in 2007. Well, I didn't hear about it until last year. So,
yeah,
you know,
there's new people every day emailing me or calling me. I've heard about this book. Is that you? Yeah. I've never heard of it before. I'm going, great. What can I tell you about it? Everything. Okay. Well, the best thing to do would be to read it. Okay. All right. and my son's like, Dad, this book's been around since forever. And I'm like, I know, but there are still people finding it today, which is great. It blows you. I think sometimes my family are like, I can't believe people are still coming to you after all this time and asking you about this book. And I suppose the testament of the material, which is why I'm so grateful that God chose me to do this work, is that the material is relevant in people's lives. They hear about this and they read snippets or they hear about it and they go, oh, I'm really intrigued by that. I really want to see what it's like. And hopefully, fingers crossed, this year we are going to produce the final definitive edition of the book that we will ever print. We have pored over this. We've pored over the original document. Oh, crikey. My wife and I have sat down and spell checked and grammar checked and all this stuff for so long that and we've had a fundraiser going to help raise money to get it printed. So hopefully this year we're going to get a brand new edition. What I want to assure people is if you have a hardback copy of this, the green one, which most people tend to have these days, is nothing's going to change. You're not going to suddenly open the new one and you're going to find a whole new chapter because that's never really happened. So the history and the story and everything is exactly the same. It's just we want to produce the new version in a slightly more extravagant way, I suppose. Because for me, this book is really special. And every time we've produced a new version of the book, it's got better quality of printing, the way it's been laid out, and we've changed the way it's been laid out because people have complained that they can't really follow it properly. And so every time we've produced a new version or a new edition, a new edition, it's been better than the last one. So this one we're going to do this year, hopefully this year, is going to be the best. It's going to contain all the pictures we've had done, which will be great for people to visualize the stories and the characters. It's going to have a study guide at the back to help people find places quicker and more effectively and give them a rundown of what each chapter is containing, which will be great. And then we've got a pronunciation guide for all those really difficult names. Yeah, and the layout's changed a little bit, not too much. So we're really excited about that. So hopefully people will like the new edition as much as they like the old one. But you know, there's nothing in the text that's going to change. It's just the way it's presented.
Okay. Well, great. And I'm talking about why don't you tell people where they find the book to purchase a copy of their own.
Okay. So basically, you go to, I remember, you go to our website, at www.restoredbranch.com, and you go to the bookstore, and it's really easy because there's either a British flag or an American flag on it. Most of our customers come from the States, so you pick the one with the American flag and you pay the money and we send you the book. And that's not going to change. We found that to be the most effective way of presenting the book and selling the book. And if you don't want a hard copy, you want it on a pad, we do a PDF version, so you can order that online. That's pretty much it. I mean, everything you want to find out about the branch or about the Chronicles can all be found on the webpage. There's a page that's about Chronicles there. There's a page about the Book of Mormon. There's a page about the Relief Society. There's a page about all kinds of stuff. So, and there's videos on the webpage too. Because I try and do little videos, little like talking points and little lessons every now and again. I haven't done
your
one
YouTube on your website.
yeah. So there's loads of stuff on there, and then of course the store where you can buy on the store you can buy all the pictures from the book that we've had done at the moment. We are having 7 more done at the minute as we speak. The artist is in the middle of the 3rd picture. So we're having 7 more pictures made up, which will be in the new edition of the book. But all the pictures we have at the moment are available online. You can go online and buy them. So yeah, everything's there. So www.restoredbranch.com. That's it.
There we go.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I'll put it in the description also, so they'll be able to find that. So that'll be great. It was funny because I wrote down quite a few questions for you.
Okay.
I did. But also my mom had one, but maybe we'll get to it in a minute. And I have to ask the question my mom asked of me too, of course. Can't forget her. So we already talked about Stonehenge, which is great. I thought it was really interesting that it was a map, of course, like of sorts, like that it was to actually help people find their way.
Yep.
How interesting. So then angels help them build these, as it says.
Mm-hmm.
And I just thought, anyways, I don't know. So I wonder how, when you were translating the book, did you find that the writers ever came and like explained something to you? Like, did you always just see it, or did you ever have any conversations, I guess, like spiritual conversations with the authors? That was a total jump of direction of thought. But as I was looking at my questions, I was like, my brain went dead, and that was the question that came to mind. So that's the one we're going to ask. So
that's interesting. The answer to the question would be yes. However, only when the text or the vision wasn't sufficient enough for me to explain or understand. It's funny because sometimes it would happen actually whilst we were translating. Like, I should say this without sounding like. Sometimes you'd have a conversation with this person and you would hear a reply. And then other times you would pray about a question or a problem, and then I would have an experience in a dream or a vision. So the answer to the question is yes, they did talk me through certain parts of that book that were more. I suppose the hardest thing was describing building techniques, because when they talk about building the temple on the plains, all they say is we constructed it with the help of angelic essence. Well, with all due respect, no angels help me build anything. So I didn't know how to convey that necessarily to the writers. and I had to see that. I had to see that process, and it wasn't necessarily that the angels were there present lifting huge sarsen stones. I mean, they gave them advice as to what stones to choose, where to get them from, how to dress them, that kind of stuff. It wasn't like the angels were there lifting up these stones and holding them above, and doing it. It was more informational guidance for the people who had never built anything like this before, who had only built small stuff, but needed a little extra help with regards to. I mean, look, I've been to Stonehenge. It's an impressive site, and it's only like, I wouldn't even say like 2% accurate what is actually there. You see these pictures of Stonehenge on the internet, and it looks grand and it's huge. It's not. It's actually really. What's left is actually very small. And when you understand that this wasn't just a ruin, it was actually a building with a roof and a floor and inner chambers, you suddenly realise just how little of it is left. And then you have to know the history of Stonehenge when you're looking at this monument, because it's been rebuilt twice in modern times. I mean, the last restoration was done in the 50s. And then you have to ask yourself, okay, how accurate was that restoration? And so even I, visiting that place, had to see a vision of what it was before it was destroyed, to get a concept of just how wonderfully majestic this building was. And so and then obviously I could imagine then when I'm reading the description of angels helping them build it, yes, they probably would need that kind of help, because you're not talking about just a circle of stones that allows the summer and the winter solstices to shine through at certain places. And you're talking about a building, because they're talking about a building in here. They're talking about a building with walls, floors, and a roof, which is completely different to just building, even though it's a big job, just building a stone circle or a calendar. And no one ever answers the question when I quiz them on it. You're expecting the public to believe that a Stone Age prehistorical people who you present to the world as having no mathematical knowledge, no building experience, who weren't communal in any way, shape, or form as we understand it, building something as massive as the structure you're saying they built. How does that work? Because all of Stonehenge is mathematical. Every little bit of Stonehenge is mathematical. From the stone, where the stones are laid, where the sun comes through, where the sun comes out, where the avenue comes in and goes from.
Pause for a second. And but it can be really hard to evolve our minds past what we've believed is true. And so, but that's really interesting. So I really enjoyed that, just from like a historical, this has always been a question mark, how exciting point of view. So that was really fun to me to read. And I know you mentioned earlier, you feel like the central message is Christ and how he changes our lives. So I was going to say that Araneck's writings kind of show this similar fate with his people as they travel away from the Tower of Babel, as the brother of Jared, and we read that in the Book of Mormon. I'm curious how you felt reading that, like when you're reading that and you're like, oh, these people are connected,
Yeah. It's, I mean, when you're in a position where you're translating something completely that's brand new to you, and all of a sudden something jumps out, oh my word, really? Oh wow, that makes sense. Yeah, I could see why that would be. I could see why that would happen, because in the Book of Ether, it is suggested, and I didn't know this till after, it is suggested that they aren't traveling within their own people group. And as soon as I found out in the Book of Jonah, I went straight to the Book of Ether and I went, hang on a minute, does that actually say that? And it is alluded to in the Book of Ether that they are not traveling, because it said, I don't remember exactly what it says, but it says something like, our friends, traveling with our friends. And I thought, wow, yeah, no one's ever actually explained to me what that means until now, till I've read till I read these plates. So there's a part of the narrative of the Book of Jonah where they're walking and they see this pillar of fire, and that stood out to me because hang on a minute. The brother of Jared saw a pillar of fire when he was walking. Are they actually with each other at this point? And I obviously found out later that but a large portion of that journey that Araneck's describing and Ether are describing are the same journey. However, you're hearing it from someone else's point of view and not the brother of Jared's, which is really great. For me anyway, because I was like, wow, yeah, that's awesome, because that really firms up my testimony of the Book of Mormon. Yeah, that's great. That's awesome. That's brilliant. So yeah, I mean, it did bother me that those things would happen, but it helped reaffirm, I suppose, and build upon my foundation that I knew the Book of Mormon was true, because I was hearing it from the second or third witness. So.
Yeah, that's actually what I was going to say. Is I think I know I think it's 2 Nephi 29 off the top of my head, that it says that these other books will come forward and they will show the world that I'm the same yesterday, today, and forever. And so that's one of those things I kind of watched for. I mean, I don't expect, there's certain things I'm okay with being a little bit different, because like you said, it's a perspective of different writers. So there's certain things that just don't bother me, when I'm reading one book or another. For these other books, and it actually really does. And I never would have noticed until the Lord kind of brought me to those scriptures, was like, read it again, and really got it in my head, that God expected this. He's planned for it. And
right.
And as you read these records like this, the Chronicles, he has planned for this. It says that this record will come forth and help testify of this other record, which I'm assuming is the Book of Mormon that it's talking about. And I think that's such a great thing, because you're building upon something. It's not like it's not replacing, it's not breaking something down. And that's sometimes, I read a book and it almost seems like it's trying to tear down a foundation instead of build upon.
Right.
And I think that's a big tell. It is a red flag, and it's a big tell for me. And so I love that they can testify of each other and build upon, because really, when I think about the sealed portion, that I thought about a lot growing up of the Book of Mormon, I thought, and what I mean, like, the sealed portion that Joseph talked about when he was translating, is that it should build upon, they should build upon these things, these things that, things. And there's certain things that we don't really talk about in the LDS church, and that I never experienced, being in it for 30 years. And so there's a lot of question marks that we still have yet to be answered. And so one of the things I really think is exciting about this book and others is those questions being answered, and how it can open our eyes, understanding, I think, for me. And it's interesting because I know that God, there's been many times over the last couple of years that he's told me that, this part of this work is to help establish equality again for women. That hasn't been a part of the conversation for a while.
Right.
And that's not because that's not a God issue. You know what I mean? It's not, women are always cherished and loved by him and equal in his sight. So it's like kind of really interesting. I think it's as I was studying the topic and pondering the priesthood, there was many times where I was just reminded that men and women, I guess, but like are being given the opportunity to receive the equality of the women, and that it's not always been possible, I guess, if that makes sense. Like it hasn't always been received.
Yeah.
And we haven't always, like mankind hasn't always been in a place where they could receive it.
Sure.
And so, and that's just like an unfortunate truth. And so God works with people wherever they are. And it's interesting how many people that they're finding this awakening within them that is telling them that it's time for women to rise. And I've heard that from so many people, and that it's just so beautiful to me to hear that from fellow sisters. That's like, you go and you have these spiritual experiences and you think you're the only one, and you're like, oh no, who do I talk to about this? Because right. I don't know anyone that's talking about this craziness, because it feels crazy. You're like, man, I don't know anyone else that's having these experiences. And then people kind of come out of the woodworks, and God's teaching people all over the world, and in helping the collective consciousness of those who are seeking him to start receiving these things that are really outside of the box of what we've been. I'm so grateful for religion and churches, because they've like maintained a level of understanding about who God is and Christ. But like, there's also this like amount of being in a box that it's also created too. And so it's really kind of cool to see how God is using people now to kind of break open those boxes of our understanding of who God is, what he can do, who Christ is, what he's doing in the world. Yeah. And using books like the Chronicles to do that, and just kind of blow the top off of that, and welcoming and inviting people to embrace more.
Yeah, I totally agree. Yeah. I think the danger within organized religion is that we do sideline and ignore women's interests too much, and I think it just makes sense to me when I read the Chronicles in particular that why not? Why would that not happen? Why is it such a big leap for people to believe that women might play an important role in society? Look, I mean, I come from a country that have had like 3 women prime ministers. I mean, just believe me, if anyone says that society doesn't reflect that, then I'd examine what kind of society you think you're living in. I mean, my wife, bless her, is she's just entitled to the same spiritual feelings and emotions and acceptances as I am. I mean, why should I be any special to her because I'm a man? It doesn't make any sense to me. But that's the attitude the 3 brothers went with. We're men. You're a woman. What do you mean? What do you mean you're a priestess? No. But yeah, that's what I am. I go to the council chamber and I take part in proper religious activity. And it was a big deal to them. A big deal. Like, wow. Then they understood it and they accepted it and they married into that society and brought it back home. And the rest is history. I just wish we would learn from that more.
Well, I think that's great. So you're saying, so within your branch, and it's called the Restored branch. What is your? Yeah. So women have the priesthood and are able to. Is it? So I have a question about it. What is your take on like how women, do they need to receive the priesthood? Are they born with it? I've heard a lot of different conversations around women in the priesthood. And what's your understanding? Like, or what's your thoughts on it?
Okay, firstly, I don't think anybody, male or female, is entitled to anything. I think my understanding of the priesthood now is that you are given it as a gift, that it's not something that you are entitled to at birth because you're a man or a woman, that doesn't matter. It's something that you are blessed with. So, for example, we are only a small branch, but not everybody within the branch would necessarily hold the priesthood. And that wouldn't be seen as a bad thing, nor would having the priesthood be seen as something to lord over somebody else. So the priesthood is given to worthy males and females. And what makes them worthy is their standing with God. More importantly, their standing with Jesus Christ. And so we give the priesthood to people based on revelation given to us by God. Now, it just so happens that most of the people that come to church have the priesthood. But my point is, it's not something that you are guaranteed by right because you are male or because you are born. It is something that you have to be blessed and given by God. And I think that understanding of the priesthood makes more sense because this is a big responsibility. This isn't a word. This is a power and a responsibility. And with that power comes much responsibility. And you can either use that responsibility well or you can use it badly. So we encourage newcomers to the branch to pray about whether they think that they are in a position where they want to receive the priesthood. Because look, once you receive the priesthood, whether it be Araneck or Melchizedek, once you receive the priesthood, you're making a commitment to a higher power and authority. And you're making a commitment to use that power and authority well. You're making a commitment to use it right. And I think the problem with the LDS model is that it's given to far too many people who don't understand it, who when they get to a certain age are given it by right and not by merit. I think that also plays into this male-centric idea that, well, only males can hold the priesthood because women can have children, and that really baffles me. Hang on a minute. They can bring life into the world. They can give bodies to spirits and help raise them and birth them and nourish them, right? But they can't have the power and authority of God in their lives. How does that make any sense to anybody? What do you mean? It's almost like we're relegating motherhood. It's almost as if we're saying, well, you can have children, but you can't do anything else.
I like to view it as we can have children, and it's that cool.
Well, yeah, it is cool. Yeah, it is cool. Believe me. Yeah, I've seen all my children be born, and it's cool. It's absolutely mental. But yeah, I mean, don't ever ask a guy to go through that kind of pain because we just couldn't do it.
So that's an interesting point for sure. Well, and I would say I agree with you. And it's interesting because I know there was a talk probably quite a few years ago now that in General Conference, the LDS Church, was that many people have been given the priesthood, but they don't actually have the power. Like they've given the authority, right, but they do not have the power.
Right.
And I thought that was a really interesting talk because they talked also about how many people have been baptized, but they've never actually received the Holy Ghost. Because, when we're told receive the Holy Ghost, it's like they're not saying it's pushed on you.
Oh, yeah.
That's hey, it's like a command, like receive it. Yeah. So, and that's a command for us, like to actually choose to receive the Holy Ghost. So, with the priesthood, in the Bible, for one, it's really interesting the different ages of people that have dreams, or God calls them to go see the prophet or something because they're meant to be a leader or receive the priesthood in some way. And but God called them to it. It's
Right.
not just something they were like, oh well, I'm 12, you know.
People often say to me, what age do you give the priesthood? And what do you mean? What age should they be when you give the priesthood? I'm like, there's no age limit. What are you talking about? If not he does this, well, not that I know of, but if God suddenly said, that 7-year-old is quite remarkable, I want him to have the priesthood, I would have no problem with that. I would have no problem with that as long as that child understood what they were receiving. And we do children a real misservice when we say they can't comprehend the power and authority of Jesus Christ. You're talking nonsense, because some of the people that Jesus Christ really referenced heavily in the scriptures, Book of Mormon, Book of Araneck, Bible, are children, and people being childlike. The reason we're asked to do that is because I think if you take the Bible, I think it's Samuel. Wasn't he chose to be a prophet when he was like 7 or 8?
Yeah.
What are you? So if I have no trouble firstly giving priesthood to women, at least the Araneck priesthood, which I've been told to do that, so that's fine. And I have no trouble giving the priesthood to anybody who the Lord said give it to, who understands what responsibilities they're being given. And I don't know about your children, but my children, they're pretty savvy. I mean, they know the importance of sacrament. They know the importance of who Jesus Christ is in their lives and what role he plays, and how important that role model is in their lives. And if they can understand and comprehend that Jesus Christ gave his life for them, they can pretty much, if they can comprehend that Jesus Christ died for them and took upon himself their sins, and they can comprehend that about Jesus Christ, and then there's no trouble with them comprehending the power and authority of the priesthood. So that's going to offend a lot of people, but I don't think there's anything.
I think it's actually a great thing, and that's probably going to offend a lot of people too that I know. So it's okay. I think that I know my own children, and they're very spiritually inclined, some of them,
Right.
And they have such a great understanding of God and of his purpose in their life. And one of my kids, he's not even 10, and yet he came up to me, and I was not doing well. I have a lot of back issues and stuff, and I was in bed, and he's like, "Can I give you a blessing? Would that be okay?" Right. And yeah. I remember just kind of going I'm like, you don't even have the priesthood, but he right. gets that that God, that he could do something like that, and that God would desire for me to be well, and that if right. he could do something about that he should. And exactly. It was such a beautiful moment, and I was so proud of him that he would think of that, and think right. to bless me, and think that why wouldn't God have a problem with that, and just him just saying a prayer.
Yeah. It's really strange, because I think children are very intuitive like that. I mean, I suffer from Meniere's disease quite badly, which is an inner ear balance disorder. And sometimes it's very hard for me to even get out of bed sometimes. And it's heartwarming at the same time. And you just want to give them a big hug and say, "Oh, thank you." They come up to you and say, "Should we pray? Should we pray and ask God to make you better?" And I was like, "Oh, that would be so cool. That would be so nice." I hadn't thought about it, but thank you very much, And that, I just think, we tend to do children. I think we tend to do children and maids, just like we do with women generally within the Restoration. We tend to do a massive misservice, because at the end of the day, whether we like it or not, unfortunately, it's a very male-dominated, male-centric belief system, if you like, because we've allowed it to get that way. And I often tell people, if you go back to the original church, it wasn't like that at all. Emma Smith was extremely involved. She was extremely involved in the priesthood, extremely involved in Joseph's life. And
well, I thought it was really kind of funny because in the Chronicles, he goes before the other men, and he's like, well, don't worry. I don't remember exactly what he said, but it's like, I'll pray about it. I'll pray about what to do. Don't like, I'm not just assuming that I know what to do here. I understand I am young.
Yeah.
And they're like, oh, God did choose a good one,
Yeah. Well, yeah, that's exactly right. Yeah. Yeah.
It just made me laugh. I just thought, this is quite the lesson on humanity because he is so young, and they get it. It says like the people were divided on this or something like that, to that effect.
Yeah.
And like I could see that, and that was a lot of issue with Joseph Smith, him being so young, and that really bugged a lot of the preachers of the day, and because they're older and wiser and have gone to school, and how dare he receive information from the Lord,
I think it bugged lots of people. I think it bugged some of the people that were supposedly very close to Joseph Smith. I think Joseph Smith spent his life annoying people, not deliberately, but he spent his life just winding people up, not intentionally, right? But he definitely wound people up. How can you know better than me? Who are you? I'm this and that. And these are people who are supposed to have known him really well and been really close to him, which I don't buy for a second. And it's still the same today. It's still the same today. Just look at. I'm not trying to pick on them, but just look at the LDS Church. I mean, you're telling me the only capable, able people that can lead the church or their church are guys in their 40s and 50s, probably even older, 60s and 70s. And they're all blokes. They're all guys. They're all men. There's not been one woman in the whole history of the LDS Church that's been anywhere near good enough to A, receive the priesthood, and B, to sit on the 12 or the first presidency. You're telling me that hasn't happened in the whole... The reason it hasn't happened in their whole history is because they don't want it to happen in their whole history. That's why I said it's a big power trip for guys, because I don't know about your experience, but I know plenty of men that hold that kind of power and authority over their wives and their sisters and their families and their congregations. But which is why I'm no longer involved with the LDS Church, thank goodness. But and which is why the restored branch doesn't really go in for things of that nature, because one of the first things I did was made sure whatever I'm going to do, I'm going to pray about this first, and I'm going to get instruction on whether I'm doing this right. And I don't think that really happens very much. I mean, people say they do. People say, oh, we prayed about this for 3 weeks and we called this guy and he's so great, he's so wonderful. I don't. I'm very cynical about a lot of things like that. I think a lot of appointees happen because they're the right person and they tick the right boxes and they're guys. So,
well, and I think
I'm going to get absolutely flated for this. I'm going to get absolutely murdered for saying this. I am. As soon as people hear this, they're going to kill me.
I'm going to get a lot of it just for having you on here. It's okay. We're a team. No worries. We're a team today. We got this. No big deal. But I don't know if I can remember what I was about to say, though. It's okay. It's okay.
All right.
Let me think if I can remember here. I don't know.
Sorry.
Let's keep talking.
I've destroyed your chain of thought, haven't I? Sorry.
No, it's okay. It's okay. It's okay. It happens to all of us. It was something because you were talking about there's no women and it's all men central.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I don't remember what I was gonna say about it, so that's okay. We can move on. So sorry, I'm just trying to decide where to take this now. I guess, how have you found, I mean, I know that it's only, you would only know so much as people have shared with you, the sisters in your branch, but I'm curious as a mom and a woman, like how that would affect their lives, you know, to know that they have the priesthood, that they don't have to rely necessarily. I still believe, like, and we'll just put this on here as a caveat, is that men and women together are gonna find the most strength and power.
Oh,
like
oh,
that,
most definitely. Yeah.
just as men have been able to use this priesthood, that women can also, and that it blesses
Right.
them when they don't have a full family unit to still not feel neglected by
Yep.
by the men in their lives. I mean, because it's hard as a woman to feel like, oh, well, if only men have this, and I've been in this abusive marriage or whatever it is, and now I'm not, but I don't have the priesthood in my home, and now I have no one to help me with these things, no one to bless my family. And like, so why would God just leave us there with nothing? And and so I while I understand that, like, I would say the ultimate power comes from like the convergence of those two halves. They're like two halves of a whole. That I can imagine that would bring the sisters, the women, a lot of peace to know that they are seen and by God, and that they're not alone, and that he doesn't expect them to just like wander and be beholden to men that have harmed them. Like in some ways, I could see it being very healing also to those that have experienced a lot of abuse from or negligence or whatever it may be from the men in their lives. And
I mean, I can only, as you say, I can only speak from my experience with the women that we've had here, and when they have found out that they are entitled to the Araneck priesthood, I mean, the experience has been so overwhelming. It's like, wow, it's like it's all of a sudden as if a whole new vista has been opened up to them, and they can. It's like they can actually really be a part of the conversation. I think, I mean, I'm speaking as a guy, obviously, but I've noticed that I think that many women within the gospel, anyway, whether they consciously think this or not, and I've had this conversation with many women, they do feel on the outside of a club. They do feel as though, why aren't I entitled to this? I mean, aren't I just as of just as good worth or as much worth as a man? And the women that have the priesthood in the branch allows them the suddenly, all of a sudden, and I agree with what you say, that the best recipe is a man and a woman together making up a whole. I think that's really important to stress, that I actually do believe in stable relationships between wife and husband and a couple. I advocate very heavily that I think it's in the best interests of both parties to be together in a stable, loving relationship. Now, I know that's not always possible, but I think with the right teachings and the right help and guidance, that can happen more often than not. But for women, they're extremely touched by the fact that God has recognized them as the right to hold the priesthood. I mean, when I first spoke to a lady who joined the branch and told her, we had a discussion, and I gave her the priesthood, and I said, "Would you like to bless the sacrament?" And the joy was just overwhelming. And I just find it very difficult when people say to me, well, that's not right, you shouldn't be doing that. I find that very difficult, because I would rather have a loving God that wants to extend his love to people. Look, I mean, there are limits to that. I mean, I'm very convinced that God has a specific role for everybody to play in life. Mothers, fathers, better when they're together than they're apart, probably. And I think each one brings something unique and dynamic to that relationship. But if both parties can have the priesthood, that's even better, because both parties then can work together as a whole rather than just one person out, somebody else who doesn't. So yeah, that's pretty much it, really. I mean, I'm a guy, so I've always had the priesthood. So it's not like I've never had it and I've just suddenly got it. But I can certainly tell you, when women have been given the priesthood, it's certainly an overwhelmingly positive spiritual experience that they go through, and a very emotional one.
I was just thinking how, as children, we, as parents, we try to have a united household with our spouse, right? And we want to have this like mutually loving relationship that we can display for our kids, so that they can have a healthy self-image as well as a healthy, relationship and dynamic as they get older and find hopefully a wonderful spouse for themselves. And I was just thinking, as you think about sacrament, if it's always the man and the woman's always behind, not involved in that. There is a power dynamic there, or an importance dynamic that is unintentionally spoken into that space.
No, I'd agree with that.
Yeah. And so I was just imagining, like, as a husband and a wife were to kneel, like, and bless the sacrament and pass the sacrament and do these things united, what a silent sermon that speaks as well, to the unity of our heavenly parents. I mean, let's just go straight to the point, like how do you think their relationship functions? Is it a more important, less important role? Is it, what is it? Do you really think? And, our heavenly parents, in the end, it's them we try to reflect. As a woman, I've always loved my Heavenly Father, but there's always been like this, but I'm not a man. So like when people tell you to be like God or be like Christ, it's like, well, great, but what does that mean within the realms of not being a guy? Like, so I can be loving, I can be kind, I can be forgiving, I can be, what are the attributes of Christ? Like, so you can go through those attributes of Christ in your mind and you can say, okay, well, I'm trying to be like him, but in the end, I can't be like him because I'm just not a guy, right?
Yeah.
So how do I become, like, if I am a God in embryo or a God in training, however you want to put that,
right?
How do I become like a God I am not, because I'm not him and he's not me? Like, I'm a woman. And so in the end, I think that's a major piece of this puzzle that we don't really have, is who is Heavenly Mother? What role does she play? And how do we emulate her as sisters? And so I think that's a huge conversation that is just starting to be had.
Yeah.
Really.
Yeah. It's a conversation that probably should have been had 20 or 30 years ago. But at least it's at least people are having it. So,
well, I was going to say there are those out there that are having that conversation or even starting it, because I'm grateful. I lived in a household where my mom talked about Heavenly Mother. She was kind of like a more given idea and concept, like, well, of course God's a father, he has to have a wife, like, of course there's a Heavenly Mother. And so that was a more open thought then, and it's like now people talk about it more openly, and it's like even in the LDS mainstream church, they talk about Heavenly Mother and invite people to get to know her, like the sisters to get to know her, and invite the sisters to learn about what the priesthood, them having the blessings of the priesthood, means for them. And like, it's like they're trying to invite us to rise. And see that a bit, and I'm just grateful for, I guess, having grown up in a home that acknowledged my Heavenly Mother, because then you were one step ahead, and so I do see, even just with my peers and the people that I talk to, that there is a general rise in understanding about Heavenly Mother and about who we really are, and that it's like, with men only having the priesthood, we think men are the ones with the power to do the cool things, and they're the creators, and they're like, if we just think of it that way, they're the ones with the priesthood, so they get to do the cool things. They get to heal people. They get to do all these things that this power entails, but as women over here, we just get to watch. And it's like, but what? How are we going to be creators, become like God, if forever we're just meant to just sit back and watch, And so I think there's God. I really feel like there's more recently kind of been this call to rising from God, to his daughters, and to realize who they are. And so I know that's true among for me and for many people that I know, and I'm sure that there are so many more people who are listening that or who will listen to this in the coming days and years, that hopefully that can help them know that they're not alone in that, what God's awakening in them to understand who they are, and that their worth is far greater than they've been led to believe, and their power, really within all of us, is far greater than we've been led to believe. And
hope so. Yeah.
Well, thank you for your time. I don't know. We can.
What was your mother's question? What was your mother's question?
Oh, my mother's question. Yes. Yeah. Hers was much more specific. She's read the book a couple times now.
Okay. Okay.
Let me get to it. It's on my phone. Question for Matthew Gill. Okay, so she is the one who asked about if you've met the people that you translated their books, and if you've actually been able to speak with them. Yeah. But she also asked if the wicked king and queen had a change of heart when you met them. Like, do you know?
Oh, right. Okay. No is the answer to the question. No.
Okay.
No. He believes he's right and still believes he's right. And she's just not a very nice woman. Sorry.
No, it's okay. It's and it lends to the fact that even after we pass away, we still have learning to do and growth to do, and that we're still that person that we were when.
Yeah, I think what I learned from seeing, I haven't seen everybody, but from seeing these people is that just because they die and they pass over doesn't mean all of a sudden they've had a light bulb moment and they suddenly realize everything they did was wrong or right. These people are very much in a position they're in because they believe that they are right. And over time, I'm sure that may change, but I mean, it's been a long time and they still haven't changed. Without going into too much detail, because it would be like another podcast. Her attitude to me was one of absolute loathing for any male child person, and that loathing and that hatred came across very strong with both of them. And I still think that they not that I've spoken to them recently, but I still think that they very much believe they were right to do what they did, which is a weird moral conundrum, I suppose, because they believe they were right. Were they right? Probably not. Definitely not. So yeah, it's interesting, but yeah, definitely no change of heart.
Wow. And that is totally another podcast. I almost started going off, but I'm like, oh no, if I start asking questions, we're gonna get caught up. but it really, you know, I feel, I will say this, and then we'll just kind of close up. I've got a couple more questions for you just as we close, but
Okay.
short ones with shorter
Sure,
answers. But
very sure. Yeah. Yeah.
but I will say that, you know, as someone who, I have so many friends who that's how they feel their calling is to kind of heal some of this generational trauma is kind of like the more common term that we talk about now, and
Yeah.
like generational healing and these different things that are in our DNA, and because our DNA has memory, you know, and we learn these things. It's some really cool things that, you know, science has learned now.
Sure.
But that there are those who have those spiritual gifts and are able to see spirits or hear them or whatever, and that we can work with these people, you know, and hopefully make an impact. Like in, you know, in one thing that it was kind of explained to me was that sometimes because the angels or other spirits of light that are trying to teach these people on the other side, they are made of higher matter. They are more pure. They are brighter, you know, like they're closer to God, more pure, and all these different things. So those that have passed on but lived a life full of so much evil and like lower vibration and darkness, really, that they have a hard time receiving from those beings of light because they don't identify really with them, you know, in that sense.
I totally agree with that. Yeah, I totally agree with that.
Yeah, and so that, and that's why those of us who maybe have some of these spiritual gifts where we're able to speak or see or hear and talk and converse with these beings, that they may hear something from us that they can't hear from an angel or something from God, because they can't, because we're stuck in these, honestly, like lower light bodies. I don't know, telestial form, this telestial form. And so we have a work to do, and we are able to still bless those that have gone on if we're called to that, you know. And I just know that I have friends that is how they feel called, and I just think that's such an interesting thing to think about, how those even that have passed on are still speaking from the dust, like these records coming from wherever they came from. Like, do you even know, right? They came, they were at your door, you were just given them. And they're coming from those who have gone on centuries before. And but how beautiful that, you know, they wrote that knowing that God would provide someone to translate it and bring their work forward and to share their message and to testify of Christ. And they did that believing in a day to come, you know, and we were, and you translated this and you put it out believing in people that have gone before, you know. And, you know, when we think about like how we like to think of time as this like linear thing, but look at that beautiful circle. And that's what I kind of call the eternal round of like time, is because they're believing in us now, and we're relying on them, and yet, and we all really do exist. It's not just because they're dead, they're not gone. Their spirits exist.
I agree. Yeah.
And so they can still be a part of our now, and still are, and we can still influence them and their past, and if they're stuck, you know. And you know, I don't do a lot of that work, so it's not a huge part of, I've done certain things that I have been blessed to be a part of, but I just think we're all way more connected than we think, even with those who have passed on. And I really hope that as more of these books, like you said, that this is just kind of the surface, and not everyone's going to read this one. Not everyone's going to find the Chronicles of Araneck, and not everyone has found the Book of Mormon, and it's been out for 200 years, you know?
Yeah,
and so I hope that those people who are called to do work like this will do so, and will have the courage to do so. And because I really think that there's a lot of healing available to not only the people who read it, but to those who are then connected with those people in history, and they're no longer forgotten. And then then we can I'm just imagining someone reading through this book someday, and they're sitting on their bed and they're thinking about this wicked king and queen or something, and they're just have this open-hearted conversation with them, you know.
Right.
and
Right.
and who knows
Who knows?
if it'll change
Who
them.
knows? Yeah.
Who knows if it'll help them.
Right.
But I think that like we have such a beautiful opportunity to be more connected as a people, and as we read these books, like to realize that none of us have ever been forgotten. We're all before God's face. He's aware of us all, whether
Yeah.
alive or passed on. You know, he is
Exactly.
aware of us all. And to feel less forgotten, and that those people who maybe don't know love and have never experienced it can feel the love from the page and from those who are reading it, sending it to them, even on the other side. And anyways, I just think it's all just a really beautiful thing that we're walking into as we kind of receive these different records, and not just the records, like just the greater light God has and is trying to send us, because he will send it to us in any form that we are able to receive it. And so whether it's someone on TikTok, whether it's, you know, wherever they may be, then they're sharing that message. And I think that's really, you know, when we think about Zion, really it's in the connection and the love and the caring about each other that I think that we'll get there. You know?
Oh yeah, without a doubt. Yeah, I definitely agree with that. Yeah.
Sorry, that was really long, but
no, it's okay. We're on the same page. Good. It's good.
So, one of my questions would be, can you describe Christ in just a few words?
Oh, in just a few words. Oh my gosh.
Keep it short. Good luck.
Okay. That's a toughie for me because I like to wax lyrical about it. Okay. Sorry. No. Pure, unadulterated love. Whenever I've been in the presence of God, it's always been pure, unadulterated love. Even though you know that you are a sinful person, I know that Jesus Christ loves me. And so that's the overwhelming, I would say, the overwhelming feeling and impression I have when I have communicated with or spoken with God is one of just absolute pure love. It's very hard to describe, but the way I would say is absolute unadulterated pure love. Yeah.
Beautiful. And what do you feel your mission in life has been?
Oh boy, crikey. That's a very English word, isn't it? Well, I would have to say my mission in life would have to be to do what I'm doing today, would be to obviously to translate the records that I've been given and to help lead people to Christ, which is what I'm trying to do every day, really, through my videos or through church or through the scriptures. My mission has been, I suppose, for like since 2007, to bring people to Christ. And I've been doing that for a while, and I never get tired of doing it. I never get tired of preaching and speaking and talking to people and testifying of Jesus Christ and his awesome amount of love he has for everybody. I think that can't be underestimated too much, just how much he loves us and wants us to know him. And I'm very grateful that I've had an opportunity to be a little part of that mission. So
beautiful. That's great. And just one more time for everyone watching, where can they find more information about the work that you're doing?
Okay, so you can find the majority of your information from going to our website at www.restoredbranch.com, which is our main website. But you can also follow us on Facebook, Facebook/Restored Branch. And you can follow us on YouTube, because we have a YouTube channel too. But the main place to go to would be the website, because then you can get links to Facebook and YouTube. So go to the website if you want to know anything about the Chronicles of the Children of Araneck, and you want to generally know more about the branch. That's the place to go.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you for sharing and spending so much time talking with me today. It's been a lot of fun.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you for having me on. I've really, really enjoyed it. Thank you.
Thank you for being here. And don't forget to subscribe. God bless.